good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when you're listening to the podcast. Thank you so much to everyone who has followed or commented on the podcast account on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you might have left a comment. Spring is hopefully upon us. I'm a complete slag for the sun. As soon as the sun shows up, that's it. My life is better. Everything has changed. So I hope wherever you are experiencing that too, because the winter sads are real and the sun is back. Thank God for that. Today's guest is Jo Pavey, and I'm going to simply put it as 5-time Olympian, but she has many a string to her bow, and it is an absolutely fascinating episode. Our key topics for today are going to be talking about Jo's journey into long distance running, listening to your body, prioritizing key training sessions, monitoring menstrual health and that impact it can have on athletic performance. It's a really fun episode, and Jo was an amazing guest. So without further ado, welcome to your weekly reminder that only dead fish go with the flow. This week I'm connected virtually with a very special guest, Jo Pavey. And I have a long list of achievements here, and I think it's very important to rattle them all off, blow the trumpet and all of that. So 5-time Olympian between 2000 and 2016, only British runner and track event athlete to have competed in 5 games, World, European and Commonwealth medalist, and most notably, I think, well, actually I've got 2 most notablies. So winning the European Championships in the 10,000 metres, but most notably, you were over 40 at the time and you were 10 months postpartum and you won just the normal European Championships, which is incredibly impressive. And my second most notably, sorry, this intro is rambling on, but host of Run with Jo podcast. So welcome to the podcast, Jo.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on.
You're very welcome. I hope we got everything in there. I was saying to you before we started, I was on your Wikipedia last night making some notes, and I was kind of like, where do I even start? Because it is quite a long list and a very wonderful career.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for that lovely introduction. Really kind of you.
Would you like to sort of tell us a bit about distance running and how you basically got into it?
Yeah, well, I suppose like at school, when I was at secondary school, that was the first time I tried more distance running, because at primary school, it wasn't obvious I could be a runner because we only did like short sprints. We didn't have any park runs or even school cross country when I was at school at primary school. So, I didn't do very well at those like 70-metre sprints at sports day. And it wasn't until I went to secondary school and my teacher said, oh, try running 2 laps of this sloping grass track. And she was pleased with how I did. My first ever 800 metres. And she recommended that I went to an athletics club. So I went to the athletics club. At first I tried everything, hurdles, long jump, everything like that, but found that I loved distance running. So I soon specialised and joined a group that was interested in distance running. And then from that, I kind of improved. I was fortunate enough to win the English schools over 1500 when I was 14 years old. And that was kind of something I just absolutely loved. But I think, and we'll talk about some of the issues later, but I got years and years of injury after that. Missed about 7 seasons, but during that time I did all sorts of enjoyable stuff and also trained to be a physiotherapist as well during that time.
And was that at Bristol as well?
Yeah, it was at Bristol, yeah. So I absolutely loved that. So there was other things I was kind of doing, but I always kept trying to do my running. And I worked as a physiotherapist in the NHS, but I had this kind of burning desire, even though I was loving physio, I had brilliant work colleagues and working with the patients was so rewarding. But I think I had this kind of burning desire in the back of my mind. Maybe I could be a runner, but I didn't want to let on to my work colleagues and that, because my husband and I took a career break and actually went backpacking around the world. But while I was backpacking, we both trained really hard. And even though we saw everything, went sightseeing, saw everything you possibly could imagine, we didn't like skimp on the sightseeing and train instead, but we worked around it. And then when I came back, I made my first world championships in 1997 in Athens. That shows how old I am now. But so it kind of went from there. But then I had another couple of years of injury after that season. And then back on my way back, got to my first Olympics in Sydney in 2000. So it's kind of been a long journey. But from enjoying it as a schoolgirl to being fortunate enough to have, quite a long career. So I've met so many amazing people and so many great experiences along the way. So I feel very, very fortunate.
I was just thinking when you're saying about sort of going into secondary school and trying all the different track and field events, I remember we used to do like, I want to call it like house games where you were sort of, or year group
Yeah.
games. And there was always my PE teacher at the time was like, "You're so tall, let's do high jump," or something. I'd always like run up to it and then just try and step over because I couldn't organise my limbs to like do the, was it Frosby flop thing. So I either had to like do a scissor kick and just try and jump as high as I could, or like just run up, organise what leg I'm on, and then like try and step over it. It was a short-lived career.
Oh.
But if someone's listening and they're like, what is distance running? I mean, there's not many people out there that don't know what running is, but I like to think some people might listen to the podcast and they'll be like, oh, I'll give that a go. What does your event look like, and what does training for that event look like?
I mean, when I was younger, I was more doing 800 and 1500, and that's kind of referred to in the athletics world as middle distance. And then I soon moved up to 5K, 10K, and then obviously did some half marathons and did some marathons as well. I mean, that's kind of distance running, I think, refers to 5K, 10K, that sort of distance. And then you've got the long distances, half marathon, marathon, but also obviously these days there's much more popularity in ultra marathons and that. So, I feel a bit inadequate. I've never done an ultra marathon, so it's something I need to do at some point. But yeah, I mean, the training is obviously a lot, but it's important to build it up over the years. Even when I went to my first Olympics, I wasn't doing high volumes because I was coming back from being off injured for a couple of years. So, because I had an operation on my knee and stuff. But so actually during that time, and I've used that kind of method, I suppose, later on as well. But my longest run was only like 35 minutes when I was going to that first Olympics, because it was more about prioritising the actual key track sessions and key workouts on the grass around the cricket pitch, things like that. But over the years, I did build my mileage up. So at the peak of my career, and particularly getting ready for marathons, I did have weeks where I got up to 120 miles a week, but it wasn't like I did that for years and years on end. And it took me years to build up to that. And it wasn't something I'd do all the year round, things like that. But I think for distance running, there's kind of key sessions within a week. It's not just about everything you do, it's about getting the training mix right. So within a week, I'd have like interval sessions, which is things like you go to the track and do horrible sessions like 10 times 800 or 10 times a K or 16 to 20 400s, things like that.
I was going to say, everyone's got their own version of that awful session that you dread
Yeah.
every week.
And you get quite nervous beforehand, because you know that hitting certain targets kind of relates to what shape you're in, and you've got races coming up. So it's hard physically, but also mentally. It's like you want to hit those targets, and it's kind of the whole day is kind of geared towards that session. If you're training in the evening, it's quite nerve-wracking. And then there's like tempo runs, which means that you kind of push yourself for sort of 15, 20 minutes or a bit longer. If you're doing a marathon, you might do sort of, more like an hour or so, and you're kind of trying to hit a pace that's like comfortably hard. So it's not flat out like a race, but it's kind of practicing that sustained effort. And then you've got your long run, which if you're doing a marathon becomes very important because it's a way of practicing, your drink strategies and the pacing and everything. I think when you're concentrating on track running, you're more just actually time on legs and thinking you don't want to be too tired for the important track workouts. Fitting in strength and conditioning. Some people do a lot more than I did, but just bits and pieces to kind of keep your core strong. And also, having some strength obviously helps with that running economy, makes sure you're not so tired in the later stage of the races and that. But it's really important that that doesn't interfere with your important quality running sessions. So it's kind of those key things within a week, but making sure they're in the right place, and also listening to your body, having a flexible plan. Of course, you're tapering before races. You're not just sort of train hard up to the race. So especially if you were training for a marathon, you'd almost start that process about 3 weeks before, because you would do your longest long run. Yeah, it does alter which event you're doing. You know, I had times when I was training for 1500, times when I was training for 5K, times when I was training for 10K, and then marathon. So there is changes in my training program, but also sort of key elements that stay the same.
I've seen a lot online recently about basically AI running programs creating injury in people, specifically in running. My question is, how important do you think it is to have like an actual coach to be able to contact to look after yourself, basically? Because I felt it was so important for me and like my development as an athlete, being able to talk to somebody about the program and knowing, okay, that's too much or that's not too much. And I'd just be interested to pick your brain on the topic, really.
My husband and I coach a number of athletes. My husband is the main coach and I'm more of a mentor type role. But for us, being in contact with the athletes is so important because you need to tailor things really on a daily basis. You need to know how they're feeling. With the females, it's really important to monitor the menstrual cycle to make sure that all that's, you know, in order, because it's very dangerous for them, especially because we've got a lot of younger female athletes. It's really important that that's maintained during the younger years. And also even with, you know, the male athletes, it's so important to monitor them to make sure they've got enough energy going in and that's all safe. And obviously my husband is regularly watching the athletes actually train and he can see if they're feeling tired, if it's too much effort and it's not really happening easily for them in the session and they maybe need to back off a bit or drop some of the longer reps and just think, okay, that's enough today. You just need that kind of more personal approach. And also you're looking after the mental well-being as well, talking things through if they're finding things a bit stressful or they're nervous about events. I think, you know, maybe there's a place for AI, but I would agree that it's quite a high risk of injury and it doesn't take into account how things are happening for that particular athlete or runner on a daily basis.
I think it is fascinating. I do think that like artificial intelligence can do so much, but I don't think coaching should be one of those one of those jobs that it takes on. And I've been laughing recently, a lot of athletes where it's like they'll make a reel and be like, ChatGPT will take your job, and it's like, men with no pockets don't fear the pickpocket. Because I'd like to see AI do, I don't know, anything at the Winter Olympics, basically.
Yeah.
We'll move on because do you have a best and a worst part of your sport?
I mean, obviously the worst part is the fact that some people take drugs and cheat. And of course, things are being done to, you know, work on that, but there's still a lot to do and you're still seeing performances out there that are suspect, and then you're still seeing really high profile athletes being caught, which obviously we're very pleased when they are caught, but it just shows that, you know, there are still a lot of athletes at the real top level that are unfortunately doping. And you know, for me personally, not a sob story about me, but I was in a situation where I didn't get certain medals because people were cheating and they were found to be cheating after that medals they had won ahead of me, but it's too late. You don't get those medals back. They just say, well, they weren't caught at that time. And it's happened to many athletes. Like when I got my world bronze, I didn't actually get that bronze on the day at the championships. I got it retrospectively because
I was going to say,
they
did it
caught
arrive in
someone
the
ahead of me.
post?
Well, I was very fortunate actually because I had a ceremony during the London 2017 championships. So I did actually get to have it awarded in a stadium, which was really nice. But it was strange in a way because it was 10 years after I'd done the race. So, you know, I mean, it was quite bittersweet in some ways because, you know, I had my husband and my lovely 2 children in the stadium while I got the medal, was they weren't even born when I did the race. So, yeah, but I mean, you miss that moment, obviously, because obviously coming off the track on that day, coming fourth, you felt so frustrated that you just missed out on a medal. And actually, you could have had that moment on the podium. There's like one European Championships, I was fourth, and all 3 of them in the future got banned for drugs. And you don't get any of those performances back. You know, you don't get. But I mean, it's not a sob story about me. I'm just saying this is happening to clean athletes, you know, all over the years during my career, and obviously it carries on happening. See, athletics isn't the only sport where this is the case, it's across other sports as well, obviously in all sport, that unfortunately some people are prepared to cheat. But I mean, I don't want to be negative about the sport because I love the sport. And, it's given me such a lovely life out of it as well. And I want to encourage youngsters into it. I don't want to be all negative about it, but
Well, I
that
think
has to be the thing, hasn't it? That's very negative.
yeah, I think it's a good moment to actually signpost people towards like anti-doping courses or UCAD, who I think you can check a lot of your supplements through, or Informed Sport, and basically we can turn it on its head and be like, if it's something you're worried about or something you need to know more information about, there are actually organizations out there who have been set up to a sort of like support people that might be feeling pressure, and also to be able to check all of the supplements that you might take, but also try and do it naturally to as much of an extent as you can. And supplements aren't always the answer, is maybe a good way to turn it on its
Yeah, I
head.
mean, I think, like you say, in the UK, it's really important that athletes are checking everything they're taking, and we do have a good anti-doping program. I think, the problem is over the years that out of competition testing hasn't
Mm,
been as good in some nations. And of course, when the athletes are actually at the competition, unless they're really badly advised or whatever, they're obviously making sure everything's out of their system, but they're still getting the benefits of the things they've taken. And, in some countries, the anti-doping is not as good in the out of competition testing. So, yeah, and I think, obviously they're not actually doing it by accident, if you know what I mean. It's not
mm.
they're intentionally taking it all. But yes, I agree there could be pressures for them in some cases to take medications that they shouldn't be taking or drugs that they shouldn't be taking. But yeah, I think accidental ones are kind of
Rare.
not on the same sort. When you hear what some of the cheats have been taking, it's not the sort of substances generally
Yeah.
you take accidentally, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
Well,
And
it's
then there's the masking agents that, the world record holder for the marathon and the women's side, 209.56, she got caught, but what caught her was how much masking agent she'd taken, which was many, many, many times over, what would be considered okay or whatever. And it was just, that's what she got banned on, if you see what I mean.
it's
Yeah, it's just a shame when that sort of performance is happening and then that's found to be the case.
always good to brush up on your anti-doping if anyone's listening. Do you have a best part of the sport?
Yeah, I think just the way athletics and other sports allows you to meet so many amazing people on the way, make so many friends and have so many experiences, and things like being able to set yourself goals and aim for them and cheer your teammates on, all that camaraderie that you get from being part of any sport, really. I think it just gives you that lovely experience in life that maybe you wouldn't have got from something else.
I think many people come on and that is the best part for them. It's that camaraderie and that experience to be connected with so many people, and have this massive common interest. And you can go into a room confident in the knowledge that you have, and then somebody will probably want to talk about running. In my case, it's always rowing. You walk into a room and you're like, don't talk about it, don't talk about it, don't talk about it. And then someone's like, ah, you do rowing. Tell me
Yeah.
about it. I would encourage anyone to get into sport. I think the negative sides of sport is, something that we're all working to improve on. And I think there are so many positives that last so much further on from just the time that you do it. There's opportunities after, there's people after that you can connect with and help push you out into the wider world. Do you have well, this is sport specific, but do you have a running ick that you would be happy to share with the podcast?
What's something that went wrong, you mean, or something?
Maybe like the coaching point of view sort of hat that you experiencing at the moment, whether or not you see any younger runners doing something and you're like, oh God, it's just not the
Yeah.
done running thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think things like going off too hard in a race and it really ridiculously makes them slow down at the end. Or I think a huge one is not taking the easy days when you should. So you're kind of exhausted and risk overtraining, not listening to your body. Getting enough fuel on board is really, really important. Over the years, I've noticed people not doing that enough in sport, which you've probably noticed in sport as well, that, people not fueling enough. But yeah, I can't think of like kind of amusing ones, I suppose. I mean, there's always things like panicking to get your number on at the last minute. You see people like try to get to the start line and there's someone's frantically putting their number on. You need to like kind of get organised and get everything ready and get to the start line. But I think getting to that start line can be a panic anyway. So you always like rushing to the toilet and that. But I think, having that good routine and things like that. Yeah, it's hard. I'm trying to think of something more funny or something that could be an ick.
People have come on and been like socks, or like very specific about the running socks that are worn, whether or not it's like the sports socks that sort of go halfway up your shin, or like the ankle socks that can slip down into your trainers.
Yeah, I mean, that is a good one. I mean, I used to wear the funny long socks, which...
The compression socks.
Yeah, the compression socks, which I'm not sure I really like the look of them, but I kind of got known for wearing them. But it was purely just because I was just getting so many calf tears and it really helped. And I don't think I had weak calves. I think I was just running too much on my calves and not using my hamstrings at all. So my hamstrings were like really weak and my calves would do everything. I think that's why they got torn all the time. But yeah, you're right about socks as well, because I remember like doing some long road races, and you can also have the other problem where the socks can slip down into the shoe if you're not careful, like if you're wearing normal ankle socks. And then sometimes I was wearing the compression sock, I'd want to wear a little sock on the top because the shoe felt too roomy and also the sock felt too slippery in the shoe. So I try and wear something on the top, and that was the really scary bit about the sock slipping down, definitely. But yeah, you have to make sure as well, socks as far as blisters and that, like I used to put tape on the bottom of my feet if it was a long race.
Oh, really?
Just, yeah, I mean, I don't know
like
if it's that advisable.
tape?
Well, I actually used to put like knee strapping tape on the bottoms of my feet, but I wouldn't necessarily advise people to do that because it's not meant for that, and you have to be really careful when you take it off. So if you take it off too quickly, it pulls your skin off with it. But it was the only thing I found that I could stick on the bottom of my feet and I could be confident that it wouldn't slide around, because tape, normal like tape that you'd use for a wound or something, it would just slide off your foot when you're running, and then it rolls up under your foot. That's an absolute nightmare.
I feel like the takeaway from this is never question a runner's sock choice, because it will be thoroughly thought through.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, you're totally right. Yeah, some
It's
people
like-
don't wear socks. It's probably a lot easier.
No,
I think in racing spikes, a lot of people don't wear socks.
Oh, okay.
But
They're slightly different to trainers.
Yeah,
though,
you wouldn't.
They?
I don't think many people would do a marathon with no socks, but they do a track race.
That is definitely psychopath behaviour. Our main section of the podcast is our Dying on the Hill, and I know this is a big passion of yours. We have sort of ummed and ahed about how we wanted to phrase it. So we settled on for our Dying on the Hill as things we wish more coaches knew about the menstrual cycle. And it's not a coach bashing session. It's a chance to sort of educate and also bring to light things that coaches might not have access to knowing about the menstrual cycle, because there's not readily available the education about the menstrual cycle.
Yeah, I think that was the point I was making, really, when we were saying that maybe some coaches aren't aware of it. It was more about that, obviously, there's so many amazing coaches out there, so many of them obviously giving hours and hours of their time every week voluntarily, and they're just doing such a good job. But sometimes they may not be aware of how important the menstrual cycle is for female athletes, as far as, healthy young athletes that have actually still got a good menstrual cycle, they're still really affected by it as far as their racing and training and how they're able to perform at different times of the month. And then you've got the other side of it where it's so important to ensure that young female athletes are having their menstrual cycle, because it might be something that's not discussed by the coach. They might feel uncomfortable discussing it, and the athlete may not even be telling the coach, but they may not have had periods for, many weeks or months. And obviously the implications of that is really poor bone health. And, red S obviously can cause the cessation of the menstrual cycle. That can obviously happen in male athletes and female athletes, that they've got REDS, which is relative energy deficiency in sport, where you're not taking enough energy on board to maintain, menstrual cycle in females, but also just in men, the hormonal profile, your bone density, all these things. And of course, with red S, that also leads to the menstrual cycle not happening, and therefore the lack of estrogen and obviously progesterone as well, as they work together, that causes, the effect on the bone density, and the athletes end up getting stress fractures. And I think it's important for females of all ages to obviously think about it, but in the younger athletes, they're not aware. And also, the skeleton is going to be getting to the maximum strength between sort of, the ages of 12 and 20 or whatever. And if they're not getting the good bone building going on during that time, because they're not having the menstrual cycle, or men obviously as well, they're not eating enough, then it can be quite hard to put it right afterwards, and it can cause long-term problems, and many runners don't get back to running, but also it's affecting their overall health going forward.
It's a very complicated thing as well, because it's, from what I understand, it's quite difficult to get a diagnosis. We did an episode back last year with Susie Deer and Gosha Bienek, and they had basically started to set up a Red S recovery program. And they're saying, like, the list of symptoms that could sort of suggest that, obviously it's the tiredness, but Susie was saying that for her personally, she was having these odd sort of reactions within her body, like allergic reactions, like her face swelled up for no real reason, and all of these other different things. It's very difficult to sort of like pinpoint that that was the actual problem, and then to start looking after her with that in mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think, when we're talking about females and the menstrual cycle, and red S, obviously the link is that by not taking enough energy on board, your body goes into that kind of survival mode, doesn't it, and stops having a menstrual cycle. And, the reason that therefore then ends up affecting the bones is because you haven't got that estrogen effect on building the bones. It kind of stops the action of the osteoclasts are trying to break down the bone, and even working with progesterone as well, that's helping to improve the bone building. And I think the thing is, for coaches, and my husband obviously is a coach who does this, it can be maybe a difficult subject for some coaches. They feel a bit uncomfortable, but it's just so important. And we're fortunate with the athletes that my husband works with. They're quite open about it. And it's really important that the menstrual cycle is put in the training diary. And he's very aware that the younger athletes, well, all the females that he's coaching, are having periods, and when they are. And if they're not having periods, he will obviously talk to them, but also get external help if necessary, and things like that. And the training needs to be reduced, and the energy intake needs to be addressed. And it's really important. It's not something that we, as a couple that are involved with young athletes, we never turn a blind eye to it. We find it really, really important to make sure the menstrual cycle is maintained, because we know the long-term damage that it can do if it's not. And I think, like when I was a young athlete, I had a really lovely coach, but it just wasn't something. I mean, I did have regular periods, but it just wasn't something that the coach would be, I'm not saying interested in, but it just wasn't a talking thing. It just wasn't mentioned. It just wasn't a thing, that a young athlete, female athlete, would be having periods. It just wasn't a discussion point whatsoever. And it's so important for coaches to be aware of their female athletes' menstrual cycle. They need to maintain a regular menstrual cycle, because obviously going forward, if they don't, they're just going to get stress fractures, and it's going to affect their bone health potentially for the rest of their lives if it goes on too long. And And also in relation to Red S, I think the thing is, performance-wise, a lot of athletes get into the trap where, to begin with, they feel lighter and therefore faster. And for a very short period of time, sometimes their performances are faster. And that kind of can get into a vicious circle psychologically, like a loop, where they feel like, yes, this is working, and it can be almost quite, not addictive, but it's like something that they get stuck into, and it's very hard for them to break because they do start running faster to begin with, but it's completely unsustainable. Even as an athlete on the team, I saw my teammates come into the team with me, be there for 1 or 2 years, and then unfortunately didn't have a long career, and because they did very well for a year or two, but then that was it. Whereas I was healthy and always had a regular menstrual cycle, which was kind of probably one of the reasons I was fortunate enough to go on for quite a few years. So you've got the side of it where they think at first it's helpful, but it's not sustainable, and the coaches really need to be aware. So there's the Red S side of it, preventing stress fractures, preventing ill health. 'Cause it's also, goes part and parcel with like poor mental well-being as well. Obviously, it can be due to eating disorders, and the fact that that also affects the mental health, how stressed they feel, how depressed they feel, and all that side of it as well. And then the other side of the need for coaches to be aware of the menstrual cycle is also just literally, even in healthy, people that are menstruating, it's the effect on the performances and effect on what training they can maybe achieve at certain times of the month as well. And that is also why we like to be aware of it, because, say at the start of the menstrual cycle, you may initially feel really tired, you may have pain, like you may not be able to do certain training types. Like even for me, I would start maybe just doing a few like easy sprints, or often we change the session to being unmeasured repetitions rather than measured stuff. That was really important for me. And then you've got the phase in your cycle where you feel full of energy, maybe like, I think like particularly for me during like the follicular phase or whatever, like maybe between sort of 8 to 14 days for me, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And feel really, really good. And I would actually target races in, like, I wouldn't enter obviously with championships, a different matter, but with normal like diamond leagues, they're called golden leagues in my career, but I wouldn't enter races if they were right at the wrong time of the month, because I knew I couldn't do well in them. So I'd always like, oh no, that one doesn't work, and I'd always be working around my menstrual cycle my whole career, just because I was really badly affected by periods.
How would you manage it if like a European or World or Commonwealth or Olympic event fell right at the wrong time for you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, my ideal situation would be that the championships was right at the right time of the month.
Yeah,
Like
of
that,
course.
that would be ideal. If it wasn't, I would take like a contraceptive type pill, but kind of more progesterone based type, and I'd take it say 2 or 3 months before and manipulate the timing, because I kind of had to, say if the Olympic Games or World Championship were right at the wrong time of month, I guarantee I'd run really, really badly. And so I'd have to start I mean, you'd have to get medical advice on this. I don't want to advise people to
Yeah,
do
of
things. I
course.
got advice and everything, and I was just taking what you would normally take in a contraceptive pill, if you know what I mean, and I was using it to manipulate the cycle. But I didn't take the pill the whole time, because I felt that one, it's not always advisable for female athletes, because it can be masking what is actually going on with the health of the body. People get a withdrawal bleed and they think, oh, I'm period. Actually, it's masking. It's not
Yeah.
advisable as a solution at all. And also, I unfortunately just found that I just performed badly most of the time if I tried to take the pill, because I had phases of trying to take the pill all the time, thinking that would be the answer. But I just generally felt a lot of fluid retention, bloating, and just felt really bad. So I would start taking the pill like, 2 or 3 months before, or sometimes a bit shorter, a few days, come off it, things like that. altering the timing, but I didn't like it when I had to do that because, for one, when I was on it, I'd train really badly and feel really terrible. And it was always like the last resort, is in, if I didn't have to try and do that, I would be pleased, because the ultimate for my body was just the championship was at the right moment in the month, and that was that. So, but I did have to. I think a lot of runners out there, like, they try and alter it. I mean, same as women do, don't they? They alter the timing for if they've got a wedding or something. It's the same sort of principle. But yeah.
I guess the takeaway is sort of planning ahead and
Yeah.
training for an Olympics. Sometimes you have to do what is best for you in your situation, but it's always good to look ahead and work out what sort of situation you could be in 2 or 3 months' time,
Yeah. You
and
look at the
work
timing.
backwards.
Yeah, and obviously, sometimes it wasn't as long as that I was working back on, because um, you can't always do that, because it doesn't work to do that as well, if you know what I mean. So sometimes it would be during the last month that I would take a pill and then come off the pill, because I never ever raced on it, because that would, for me, I'd run extremely badly. So for me, it was about altering the timing, because if I thought, oh, well, I'll just be on it when I'm racing because I won't be having a period, then I'd race really badly because I would have a lot of fluid retention.
Mm.
And so, yeah, it was quite a juggling act in that respect. But I think I'm always grateful that I was at least healthy, and whereas, a lot other runners were sometimes just not having them. I
Mm.
mean, not necessarily some of the top runners. I'm just saying some of the people who didn't have long careers because
Yeah.
they had that short-term gain, maybe, of thinking, oh yeah, this is great, this is working, but actually they could only have, a couple of good years, and also it affected their health long term, which is really sad.
But do you have any bits to add in terms of the positive effects of our menstrual cycle on performance?
Obviously, the positive side of it is that if you're having a menstrual cycle, then you're healthy, you're going to get the best out of your body, you're stronger, and at the right time of the month, you're going to be performing better because you're in that optimal health. And having that optimal health also affects you mentally. You feel better in yourself, you don't feel depressed, you're just in that good health, and being in good health is going to get your best performances. The positive side is you can, I suppose, maybe choose races that are going to be at the best point in the cycle if you can. That can be good. But I think also being open to have that awareness for yourself and for your coach means that you're going to be able to plan properly for training and racing, because with the training, you can actually get injured if you push yourself hard at the wrong time of the month, when you're really struggling and you've got a lot of fluid retention. I sometimes found that I start triggering off sciatica because I'd be training and I'd have a lot of kind of feeling fluid around the pelvis and, and everything. But also I think even times in the cycle, like say in the middle of the cycles, apparently you can get more injuries because of the effects on the ligaments and things like that, but I didn't really experience that. But it's more, I used to get more prone to injury if I had a lot of fluid retention. I was trying to do quality running and stuff. So I think the positive side of it is if you're really in tune with your menstrual cycle and you're sharing that with your coach, and your coach is somebody who's got that knowledge, you can tailor your training as well. Like, you shouldn't be afraid to think, okay, this isn't happening today. You're not going to just battle for this session. You're going to modify it in real time when it's happening. So how I cope with that is if I really just couldn't get around the K reps or the mile reps, we'd do some easy 200s, but not flat out, things like that, just a few, not sort of really high quality. But I would also sometimes swap to doing unmeasured. So instead of doing like K reps, I just do 3-minute efforts in the outer lanes, putting the effort in, but not having the pressure of trying to do it in a certain time. And athletes could do it by heart rate as well nowadays with heart rate monitors if they wanted to, but not having the stress of knowing you're not hitting the targets, and also not overstraining. And I think just being kind to yourself and knowing that there might be certain times of the month you can't perform as well as you would like to and things like that. But yeah, I think the positive side of it is having that awareness, having that openness.
Somebody told me once, your body doesn't know the number, it only knows that it's trying.
Yeah.
And I think that's really relevant. It's like, I think there's the book, The Body Keeps the Score, and the body does keep the score, but it might not know what the actual number is. It just knows how hard it's had to work or what it's experienced. It couldn't tell you, oh, it's a 7. It would just say, oh, it's hard.
Yeah. Oh.
And it's only our brains that really tell us the number. Our body just says, oh, it's hard, or it's easy, or, I'm
Yeah.
fine. Speaking of, I think it's very important to mention your European win 10 months postpartum. How was that? Trying to think of a clever way to ask, but how was that?
Yeah, it was quite unexpected because, I was over 40 years of age as well. And I kind of thought, well, the chances of me getting any medals is beyond me now. It's not going to happen now. I'd not got a gold medal before any championships. I'd had other medals, but not a gold at a championship. And I was happy. I thought, well, I've been very fortunate. I've had the, enjoyable career. I think at the start of the year, I just thought, oh, maybe I could have a go to make the team for the Europeans or the Commonwealths that are being held that year. But I thought I was probably totally unrealistic. But I thought I'd give it a go. And I think one of the biggest battles of being ready actually was doing the trials for the 10,000, because that was in May. I think it was May the 10th. So that was a lot earlier than like the August, which is when I did the championships. So that was really close. I had Emily in September, and then that was right at the start of May.
Oh
So that was
God.
the thing. And fortunately, I won the trial to get the team place, because without a team place, you wouldn't even be at the championships in the first place. So kind of that was the bit that was undecided, because I remember saying to the meeting organizer, I've entered, but could I make my decision at the last minute? Because obviously it was probably quite unrealistic, and it was only really down to the wire. I thought, yeah, I think maybe I could give this a go. And fortunately got my team places. And then the Commonwealth Games was actually 10 days before the Europeans, and I ran that, and I got a bronze medal in that, the Commonwealth at Glasgow in 2014. And then I wasn't really that confident going to the Europeans, because at the Commonwealth I only did the 5,000, and then I was doing the 10,000 at the Europeans, and it was all about it being double the distance, and also most of the rivals hadn't done the Commonwealth Games because obviously their countries weren't in the Commonwealth. So the great majority of the people had only been focusing on that one championships. I think that did actually have an effect of sharpening me up anyway. So it was probably quite good preparation. Going around the laps, the early stages, I tried to keep economical in my running, tried not to run wide, tried to be on the inside, but it became really bunched, so I ended up running wide a little bit because I felt like my stride was being cut. But then, the closing stages and that last lap, I tried to focus. I felt really nervous. I tried to give it effort but not overcook it, and I trying to judge it on the way round. And then when I crossed the line at the end, I think I just put my hands halfway up. I thought, no, I couldn't have won. I can't believe this. I didn't want to over celebrate and embarrass myself. So I kind of half celebrated. And then it was confirmed to me that I won. And yeah, I couldn't believe it, because I never thought that would be the circumstances, being over the age of 40 and just coming back from having our second child. And it was all really surprising. I think it taught me a lot about happiness, but also training wise, prioritizing the most important aspects of training, because obviously coming back from having a baby, I couldn't maybe do all the mileage. I couldn't do everything that I would have ideally wanted to do. So I kind of took the focus of just prioritizing the main important sessions and tried to get those right. And thought, well, if I can get these K reps right in training, or these 800 meters right in training, I could maybe have a chance of racing at a good pace. Whereas if you just do loads and loads of mileage, it's kind of irrelevant if you get on the track and after 1K you just blow up because it's too quick, if you see what I mean. I think you can apply that to any sport or any event, put the priority on the main important parts that are specific to the goal that you're trying to achieve, whichever sport that's in or whatever distance that is, then work back from that. And if you can add things in that you can cope with, or injury allows, or energy levels allow, whatever, then that's the way to do it, really, rather than trying to do everything and then ending up with nothing or ending up with injury.
Yeah, we always would say choose a A, B, and a C session out of the
Yeah.
week, and you the A, B, and C sessions, they would be the focus of the week, and then
Yeah.
all the other sessions in the weeks we would train 2 to 3 times a day.
Yeah.
So all those other sessions, you would give them your time and your energy, but they weren't priority sessions. So if something had to change, those were the sessions that got changed or adjusted.
Right.
Whereas the
Yeah.
A, B, and C sessions, rain or shine, those were getting done 110%. Again, it's that looking ahead and actually working out what the coach has set you, and also what you need to work on in order to make sure you pick the right A, B, and C sessions. Would hope that some people, like some younger athletes, could maybe listen to this and be like, well, I'm not ready to have a child, so maybe I'll just take the advice rather than like going all the extreme to
Yeah, I
having to
mean, like you
work it
say, the
out.
same principles apply, and that's what I was saying. People that are like struggling with exhaustion or trying to fit work around their training, I
Mm,
think the same principles apply, and just being kind to yourself. And I think, because I had a newborn baby and I wasn't getting a lot of sleep, and I was breastfeeding. I only stopped breastfeeding a month before the trial, because the thing is, I really wanted to breastfeed. I know not everyone can, but I really wanted to. But when I was breastfeeding, I was training hard, but it was hard to get that real top end performance. If you know what I mean, I could run
yeah,
reasonably well, but
not
yeah. So,
surprised.
so I stopped about a month before I did the trial, but it was just working around that because Emily wouldn't take a bottle. So I had to have her with me at all times. Like, I couldn't express milk or anything. She just literally wouldn't take a bottle, which surprised me really, because even with our first child, Jacob, he would take a bottle so I could express milk, or whatever, but she just wouldn't. I used a treadmill as well,
Mm,
which I didn't start using treadmill really until I was pregnant with my first child. But that helps you to know you can stop immediately, or you can fit in runs maybe when the baby's having a nap or whatever. In the situation I was in of coming back and having a newborn, I did feel tired, but I didn't feel stress or any expectation, if you know what I mean. I think for a lot of athletes, they feel that expectation and that people are expecting them to perform in a certain way. And I did have
mm,
um, stresses in some way of getting back to fitness and the pressure maybe like from sponsors and things like that. But at the same time, I did feel quite relaxed because I felt like no one would really be expecting me to perform at a certain level. So I could just kind of focus on doing what I could do. And I felt really mentally happy, even though it was quite tiring. And then just being at the track like 3 hours later than I planned, but still doing the session and just being sensible and doing what I can. And I think that kept my health good and was, a thing really. It taught me a lot about how to approach training and racing anyway, I think.
It sounds like that whole experience might have been one of your favourite moments, which I have as my next question. What do you think? Was that your favourite moment, or do you have a different one?
Yeah, I suppose career moments, that would be my favourite moment. I think it was the fact that it was surprising because of how old I was. I think that was the thing as well, and not just come back from the baby. And, because I was flattered to get a lot of notice about that, but I think it was more just the banter about me being old. Like, I had a new name. I was known as Jo Pavey 40 in the newspapers and things, because it was more that I'd done it at that age and I was the oldest person to do it at the time or whatever. And it was kind of the banter, like my teammates would call me Granny, but I loved the banter. And I think as I was finishing the final stage of the race, Steve Cram was shouting, Jo Pavey, 40 years of age, and that, which was really kind of him because he really made a nice atmosphere. But it was just the whole banter around all that was, quite flattering, really, I think.
Mm.
And and it was, it was a special moment because it was totally when I didn't expect it. I thought my career was kind of over, even though I still enjoyed running. I didn't think it was possible to get a medal anymore.
Well, it's paving the way for other people to do it.
Thank you.
It's very, very inspiring. And I met up with these ladies who do pink champagne dragon boat racing in their breast cancer survivor and support group in Dorset. And most of them are in their 60s and 70s, even up to 89. And they
Wow.
obviously had this, you know, this hill of breast cancer at whatever age it hit them, and that struggle. And a lot of them were saying, oh, I never did sport and I never did this, that, and the rest. And now they go to Vancouver and Venice and everywhere with this support network of the breast cancer dragon boat racing. And I just find it so wonderful. I'm 28 now, and I know I have younger listeners, but to look out and see all of these women doing everything into whatever age of life that they are, I was worried that I would sort of get married and maybe lose a bit of my identity. I think my husband would disagree because I'm very outspoken, but I didn't want to lose any part of that or, get smaller. And I think it's really exciting to see so many women as they get older just become bigger and bigger versions of themselves and set new standards and go and do new things that I hadn't even sort of dreamed of doing.
Yeah, that's really inspiring what you said about those ladies. It's definitely so inspiring.
They're lovely. They're a lovely bunch.
Yeah.
But we do have my favourite sort of moment of the podcast, which is best fuck up. So do you have a best fuck up that you'd be happy to share with the pod?
I mean, I've obviously got absolutely loads, I'm sure. I'm trying to think. I remember one really silly one, which isn't like that massive in some ways, but I really kind of planned what I do pre-race and, pre-race meal and everything. And before I go out on the track, literally last minute, I like to just have a little bit of a sports gel just to give me a little bit of an energy boost, not a whole one, but just some of it. And that was quite an important part of my routine. And I remember being in the call room for the race and I opened the gel and I dropped it on the floor, and then the athletes starting to process out to the race, one of them just stood on it and the whole thing just squeezed out. And then I was gutted because it was an important part of what I do. I thought, I'm not going to have my little energy thing. And then I had a Mars bar in my bag. And so I just had a bit of that and I felt and it was fine. I think everything worked out all right. But I thought it was so stupid because it was so important that I had that, in my opinion. Just a little bit of energy gel was my routine. And that was really stupid. I just remember it all just squeezing out on the floor. And I thought, right, take a spare next time.
Tacky and
yeah, it was great. Things like that. But I think race plan can be bad. I remember my first ever marathon, which was the London Marathon. I'd spent a lot of time working out what pace I should run. I just needed to be a bit sensible and not go off with the front runners probably and stuff like that. But as soon as it went off, I just went for it and just went mad. And I thought even by halfway, I thought, oh, this is all right. But then, I didn't do too bad in the end in some ways, but you talk about you've got a kind of even pace and that. And I did the second half 7 minutes slower than the first half, which at supposedly elite level is a big significance. It's just really bad running. And I just remember being so delirious in the last 40 minutes. And it was just really stupid because had I been sensible, after all that preparation, the halfway split I went through at least sort of 4 minutes quicker than I was actually intended to do. I just literally ignored everything I'd spent ages preparing in my training, knowledge of what pace I could do. Because, I'm a lot older and it was harder back then because we didn't have GPS watches and that in training. So I think nowadays it's a lot easier to be running in training at a certain pace. You kind of get that awareness of what you can sustain and what you're running. When you're inexperienced at a marathon, it's okay if you've done a few, you learn. But when you're doing your first one, it's quite hard to have really got a really good idea of what you can sustain. I did do physiological testing, tried to do that, but I still felt well, this is on treadmill and it's not kind of actual running outdoors on a road, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
So, yeah, I really messed it up.
I think we in rowing we often call that a fly and die approach.
Yeah, that's what I did. Yeah,
I don't know when GPS watches would have sort of become a real thing, but I remember getting one in the 2017 winter or the 2018, and being able to track everything, and then being oh, I think this pace is quite good, and being able to look down at a watch or the GPS on. We have we call them speed coaches, and it's a little box that goes at the front of the boat, and it will give you live feedback every stroke, and you've got a real good gauge. And I guess without that, you would only have the pieces that you would maybe do on the weekend to show as to whether or not you're going fast.
Yeah.
It's a really obvious point, but it's a really interesting thought, knowing how reliant I was on GPS and like those watches.
Yeah, I remember years ago, right, a company asked me to try out one of the first ever ones, and it was hilarious. It had a watch that was so heavy that you couldn't move your arm properly when you're running, and it had a backpack
I was
thing.
going to say,
So
did it have
you
a
had to run
backpack?
with a backpack on, and it was absolutely hilarious. And I didn't like it at all because it's like, well, it was kind of irrelevant because you couldn't really run any sort of pace when you were using it because it was like so much equipment, and a bit, it was funny.
I imagine it also had like, well, it probably didn't, but I imagine it with like a massive antennae.
Yeah, it must have had something, yeah. I don't know, but it was funny. I wasn't happy about it because it just was, I suppose it was just more interesting than anything rather than actually being useful. But,
yeah, you're like, this is
yeah.
never going to catch on.
No.
Fast forward.
Yeah, that's what it felt like, yeah.
Do you have a Jo mantra or sort of a quote or words that you live by that you would or want other athletes to know about?
I think one of them I like to talk about is it's an approach to training, and it means bringing in everything that you're thinking about your body, your mental state, and whether you've got injury niggles. And I suppose in a sentence it would be do what you can do rather than what you feel you should do, if you know what I mean. Because you can be thinking, oh, whichever sport you're in, like say in distance running, you're aspiring to doing the training that you're seeing that some athlete is supposedly doing that's one of the best in the world and things like that. And people try and emulate it because they view it as this is what I should be doing. But it's more like what can you do is in what can you do that's going to bring the best out in yourself. And that means listening to your body, doing the volume and the training plan that allows you to do the good sessions. It allows you to be consistent without breaking down, and it allows you to have good mental health and good energy levels.
It's actually my dad's. I'm not going to steal it straight from my dad. And I can't think how he normally phrases it, but we're all very good at adapting. Humans adapt all the time. We adapt to whatever situation. Your present state isn't going to be your present state forever. And what I mean by that is you might be looking at somebody else doing X amount of training and think, oh, I really want to be able to do that. But that's at that present state, you might be able to not be able to do it. But in future state, if you do your training well or right, that could be you in a few months' time or a year's time or however long it takes, because we do adapt and we adapt really well. We adapt to live pretty much anywhere, and our training, if we do our training right, we can adapt really well to do anything. Nothing will stay exactly the same forever. So if we just give it time, it will come right, or something will change.
Yeah, and also like, young athletes have to be careful of their development, enable them to grow and develop and not affect their growth. And then, older runners as well, and runners that get into it. Like I'm involved with Running at 40 Plus, a brilliant online community that encourages older runners. And like for them, they need to be thinking about, right, they're just getting into it or they're a certain age, and listen to your body and do what's sensible for you, So I enjoy being ambassador for them. And it's like doing what you can do and should do for your age, level of experience and everything. So yeah, I think you're right, that's really important.
I have one more question for you, and some people find this one really hard and some people find it really easy. Do you have a soundtrack of the week, like a song or a favourite song that you would listen to before training or after training or during? This is the one that gets everyone.
Yeah, it's really hard if you haven't had any warning, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, I used to, as a younger athlete, I used to absolutely love U2, and I used to love a lot of stuff they did, sort of upbeat songs. Maybe I think of as like Vertigo or Beautiful Day. Now I like some of the old classics as well. If you think about motivational songs like Aerosmith, Dream On, things like that. I think something more current, because I do like a lot of current stuff. It's hard to put your finger on it, isn't it?
It
Like,
is. It
so
is
like a lot of
hard.
dance tracks and stuff like that. It's really hard to know what I could say for current stuff because I think a lot of athletes in my age, you're often stuck in your ways. You listen to the old sort of anthems and bands you were into when you're younger. But
I
so
was
I think if it's a
laughing.
song for the week, that's what I'm trying to think
Oh,
of.
it doesn't have to be current this week. It just whatever sprung to mind. I was laughing with
Yeah.
Matt the other day because when I grew up, my dad was a big fan of Wolf Mother and Motorhead
Oh
and The
yeah, cool.
Prodigy. So but my mum also liked a lot of Katie Mellower and oh God, I can't think. And like I remember some Nina Simone sort of CDs around. So I had quite a contrasting musical upbringing. And my husband Matt's always tagging me in videos of like The Prodigy on Instagram.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah,
So very different.
yeah, yeah. I went to watch U2 a few times, and one particular good one was when I saw him in Melbourne when I was out there training, and it was really cool because we got right to the front.
That is the best. Well, that is everything that I have down on my list. Do you feel like you have covered everything you wanted to cover on the podcast?
Yeah, I mean, I could chat all day, enjoying chatting. Keep
Oh,
going.
good. Oh, good. Well, thank you very much for coming onto the podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. And if anybody they've listened to this and they want to find you, and if you want to be found, where can they find you online?
Well, I mean, I'm doing a podcast now in conjunction with Running at 40 Plus called
Of
Run with
course.
Jo, so you could have a listen to that. I've got some really lovely guests on that and stuff. But yeah, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. Really enjoyed chatting with you. Thanks so much.
You are very welcome. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Only Dead Fish Go With The Flow. You can find us on Spotify, Apple, Amazon. YouTube is in progress. And you can also find us on our website. And I think the stickers are live on the website. So if that is something you are keen to get your hands on, then you can now find them on the website, which is linked in the Instagram bio, the Spotify bio, and the Apple bio. Thank you, and speak to you next week. Bye bye.